Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome into O'Neill's Grill for our weekly Fan and Press Luncheon with JMU head football coach Mike Houston. My name is Kurt Dudley. Delighted to be with you once again here on a Tuesday afternoon here at O'Neill's Grill. Duke's coming off a loss at UNC this past weekend, losing on Saturday. 56-28 was the final. JMU maintains the 11th ranking in the Stats FCS poll, and the coaches took note that the JMU offense was pretty good on Saturday, and they bumped them up to number 7 on the National Coaches Poll. JMU is one of 6 Colonial Athletic Association teams ranked in the top 25 this week. A few other team notes, as JMU certainly has been very productive offensively. The Dukes continue to rank number 2 in the country in scoring offense, nearly 55 points a game. Rushing offense, 340 yards per game. Third down conversions, a whopping 60%. And total first downs with 90 thus far. They're 4th in total offense at 540 yards per game. Couple of player notes for you. Brian Shore, he is 3rd nationally with his completion rate of 72.2% and is 5th in passing efficiency overall. Khalid Abdullah had 116 yards on Saturday, and he scored his a couple of touchdowns, and his 100-yard rushing game is 2nd in the season, the 6th of his Madison career for the senior. He scored his 22nd and 23rd rushing touchdowns of his career. That ranks him 9th all-time in that category, with Ron Stith, who picked up one of his 23 rushing touchdowns, actually 41 years ago today, in a victory over Washington in Lee, 21-16. It was also, while we're on the subject of history, it was also 8 years ago today that Scotty McGee returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown. And then we had Rodney Landers on the Duke's first line of scrimmage play in the second half, raised 62 yards for a score, and that started the Dukes on their way back from a 21-0 halftime deficit on their way to a 35-32 win over App State. How many in here remember that game? I thought so, yeah, quite a few of you. Again, that's in 2008. The Dukes, next up, will face the Maine Black Bears. That's coming up this Saturday. They open up Colonial Athletic Association play. JMU does lead that series 11-5. They've won 6 out of the last 7, but these programs have not met since 2012, and I'm sure Coach Houston is going to tell you, throw all those records out the door anyway. Saturday's kickoff will be the first among all in the FCS this week, as they will kick off at noon at Alphon Stadium. The JMU the JMU Sprint Broadcast Network will begin its coverage at 11 a.m. with the pregame show. That is accessible online through Matazone Free Audio as well as on WSVA Online. And TV coverage will be on the American Sports Network. One other note, the JMU Office of International Programs and Study Abroad this week is sponsoring a university-wide international week. And with that, there are 40 international student athletes participating in sports at James Madison University. On the men's side, we have 12 on men's soccer, for example, and the leading team among the women is field hockey. They have 5, but again, 40 international student athletes at JMU. Just wanted to throw that out there during International Week. We don't have any international players for the football Dukes, although some have some foreign ties, of course, but that for another day. Right now, let's bring in the head coach of the Dukes of James Madison, Mike Houston. Mike?
Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for being here again today. So thanks to O'Neill's for hosting us again this week and giving us all a great atmosphere and great food. So obviously disappointed in the loss this past weekend at North Carolina. Our team had very high expectations going in there. I thought that our players were ready to play. At the start of the game, I thought we came out and got a good fast start, to get things going with a very nice drive by our offense. It resulted in a 7-0 lead, and very pleased with our ability to respond all throughout the first quarter. Giving us a 21-14 lead going into the second quarter. Obviously, not overly pleased with some of the mistakes that we made on the second drive on defense. And some of the things that happened throughout the game on that side of the ball, but I thought that our players competed and played all throughout the game. I thought we got a lot to build on coming out of that game at North Carolina. and a lot of things to correct going into our game this week at Maine. So, Maine has a tough, hard-nosed football team. They've played 2 FBS opponents to start the year. They lost a very, very close game to UConn on a last-second field goal, and then hung with Toledo for 3 quarters until a block punt and some momentum kind of got them there in the 4th quarter on the road at Toledo. So you have a team that's been battle tested in 2 very, very tough games against upper-level opponents. They've had 2 weeks off to get ready for us, so I'd imagine they're well rested. It's their home opener. I'm sure that they will be highly motivated with us coming in there. And Maine is always a tough place to play traditionally for CAA schools. So I would say we've got a pretty stiff test this Saturday. So I believe our kids will have a good week of practice. They're very motivated to get off to a good start in the CAA, but we'll be challenged greatly, and we'll have to play probably our best game of the year in order to have a chance to win this Saturday at Maine. So that's where we're at right now. Any questions from the media?
Northern Virginia Daily. Can you just talk a little about the precedings, Mitchell and Matt and Kyle and offensive line, how they kind of brought that group together this season?
Well, I think, all 3 of those kids, since I got there, have just done a great job of leadership, their work ethic. Of course, Mitchell was out during the spring, so, most of what I saw of him was rehab in the spring, but, throughout the summer and the fall camp, he's done a great job there. Kyle Rigney is, he's a lunch pail kind of guy. He's doesn't say a whole lot. He's going to work his tail off. He's tough. He's a physical player. He's an overachiever. Probably the same thing for Frank. You look at the game Saturday. Frank's matched up against interior D tackle from North Carolina, 97, who's 6'6", 310. Frank flatbacks him on the opening play of the game on Khalid's run. Frank's a tough player. Very strong, a kid that's really worked hard to develop himself. So I think that we have those traits. With those 3 guys, and they're your leaders and they're very good players. I think that says a lot about the identity of our offensive line, because that's kind of how our offensive line plays.
Greg Medea, DNR, has that offensive line allowed Donnie to call the game how he pretty much wants to call it? I mean, with as far as how you guys can run the football and pass too, has that offensive line and their success allowed you guys to do pretty much whatever you want offensively?
Well, I think that group gives us confidence going in that we're going to have the opportunity to be able to do the things that we want to do. Now, a lot of that has to do with what scheme they're seeing. Obviously we've seen for the most part 3 different schemes in the first 3 ball games. But I think that in each ball game, our offensive line has played well and has given us the ability to go out and run the ball effectively. They've done a good job protecting Brian. I thought they did a good job Saturday against a very stout North Carolina front 7 who pressured us a good bit as the game went on. Brian really still had time to stand in there and throw, and had a good day, passing the football. So I think that group has been really the key to our production on offense so far.
Dave Thomas, ESPN Radio and JMU Sports Radio Network, talked about Brian Shore's decision-making against a very active North Carolina defense. Just him being in the pocket, he took some shots, but, he had a pretty effective day passing the football. Just talk about his outing, if you will.
Well, I think Brian has worked very hard to put himself in a position to make those good decisions. And what I mean by that is from day one, he's been a guy that's always in the film room. He's always asking questions. He knows what everybody on the field has to do on every single play. You'll see him make a lot of adjustments formationally with players pre-snap if somebody's not lined up exactly right, if their split's too tight or too wide for what they're supposed to do. He'll make adjustments across the board as he sees them. And so I think that's a player that's worked very hard to give himself a great preparation and understanding what needs to happen, what needs to go on. And so that preparation carries over into being able to make decisions because he knows the offense so well. He's going to know the opponent. He's going to know what he sees pre-snap, what to expect. He's done a good job of knowing where to go with the football and not putting the ball in jeopardy.
Coach David Guzman from TV3 in Harrisonburg. You said Saturday that you saw the team that they could be. Now that you've looked at tape, are there any examples that kind of make that statement true? And also, how far away right now are they from being that team that they could be?
Well, I think that you're playing a team that is picked to be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the ACC this year, and as good a skill as we're going to see at any point throughout this year. We took a 21-14 lead in the second quarter and had a almost 500 yards total offense on the day. So that shows me what we could be. All the things, as I said Saturday night after the game, the things that I see that really, North Carolina's a talented team. They're going to have some success no matter what we do. That's just the fact. But if we can correct the mistakes that allowed them to have more ease with their success, then I think we can become a team that can be a really solid top to bottom both sides of the football team. But we've got to get those things corrected. We've got to play more disciplined. Part of it I understand is first year growing pains, new system, expectations, stuff like that. Some of that has a little bit to do with it, but I have a very low tolerance for repeated mistakes, and so we're going to get those corrected pretty quickly.
Is there any disadvantage with the schedule with Maine coming off a bye week and you guys coming off of playing North Carolina? And do you have to do anything to combat that just to keep your team fresh?
Sure, but they're coming off a bye week and we got to go to them, but that's the schedule we have. We've got a lot of teams we're going to play this year coming off byes. But that's just, I didn't make the schedule. I inherited it. I don't know if somebody pissed off the CAA years ago. I don't know. But we're going to play the hand that we're dealt, and we're going to go attack it.
In practice, though, just as far as resting your guys to make sure they're fresh?
Well, the big thing we're talking to them about is they've got to start getting sleep early in the week this week. We're talking to them about hydrating early in the week this week. We've already started talking to them about how they got to get up Saturday morning, and first thing they're going to do is eat pregame meal. So a 12 o'clock kickoff, so we're going to get up, eat pregame meal, and go do what we're going to do. So I think really it's just preparing them for what the last half of the week is going to be like after having some late kickoffs and all of a sudden a very early kickoff on the road. But it'll be fine. We're going to travel up. Our Friday is going to look very similar to what it did last Friday. We'll maybe be an hour earlier getting, wrapping up in the evening to get them to bed just because of the early kickoff, but it's not going to be a huge issue.
You sort of touched on the 2 games Maine has played thus far, but 2 really starkly different scores when you looked at. Can you break that down a little bit more, because they really had a chance to beat UConn?
Well, UConn, they had the lead in the fourth quarter, and then UConn's able to come back. They kicked the field goal right there at the end to beat them. But Maine led a lot of that game and played UConn very, very tough. But even the Toledo game, the Toledo game is a 1-score, 2-score, 17-3 kind of game in the third quarter. So that game was very, very close, all the way towards the end. And like I said, Toledo, blocked a punt, got some momentum, and really got some things on the roll, there late in the game that kind of, made it look a lot worse than what it was. But really, it was a highly competitive ball game. So, it just goes back to, what we see is, Maine has a very talented senior quarterback that I believe it's his 3rd year as a starter. He has a very solid offensive line that's protected him. You look at their offense and their defense, it's mostly juniors and seniors. So it's a very experienced, older football team. They have 3 wide receivers, 2 of which were all conference last year. The third is actually their leading receiver this year, Jaleel Reed. Flip over on defense, 2 all-conference defensive linemen, a first-team all-conference inside linebacker that's supposed to be one of the better ones in the league, free safety that played at Arizona State last year. So I say all that to say that, you have an experienced veteran roster that is very aggressive, that will play very physical, very hard-nosed football. You're going to their place. It is going to be a very tough game for our team. We're going to have to play very, very well to have a chance to win on Saturday.
Can you talk a little bit about their running game? What kind of challenges it present? They have a couple different backs.
Yeah, they're multiple pro offense. So you're going to see them in, what you never see in college football hardly anymore is you're going to see them in a pro formation with two backs and an I backfield with a tight end and the quarterback under center. And you're going to see them run, G power, split zone, outside zone, some things, some downhill run plays that you don't see a ton. So it does present challenges. It's something you used to see 10 years ago a lot. So we got to prepare our kids for that, physical downhill run game this week in practice.
Coach, how do you approach these conference games? Do you feel like there's a bit more of a sense of urgency since, these are games that really count in the CAA standings, obviously?
Well, to me, every game counts, and and each week we just got to focus on what's right in front of us. Last week is put away. We're on to Maine. Our kids, if you ask them, that's the response they're going to give you. We're on to Maine. We're focused on Maine, and Maine is the only thing you're going to hear out of their mouth. So we try to take just each game one at a time. Don't worry about the last one. Don't worry about the next one, and just focus on what's right in front of us.
Is defending against the big play, as we saw on Saturday, is that kind of going to be a point of emphasis? Where do you think this team needs to go in terms of that aspect of the game?
I think the big thing we've got to do is we've got to play sound, fundamental, disciplined defense. Because if you do that, you limit big plays from the opponent.
I know on Saturday after the game you touched on the pass rush a little bit. Is there anything you guys are doing differently in practice, or is there anything you guys are talking about to, I guess, kind of increase the pressure on the quarterback, whether it's with Andrew, with the whole unit? How do you approach that aspect of the game?
We work on it every week. We're going to continue to work on it. You look at teams we've had. We had a 3 technique with 13 sacks last year. Had one with 17 sacks a few years ago. We've traditionally got a very good pass rush. So we're going to continue to work at it and continue to push the kids. I do think that maybe playing more players may be something we need to look at. So we've got guys that are fresher in the ball game. But we've got to generate more pressure on the quarterback.
Coach, I know you touched on their senior quarterback, but both of their quarterbacks are fairly experienced. Both played at least 9 games last year. Have you seen them use both of them this year, and what are the differences between the two if you have?
Primarily Collins is the guy. He's their leader on offense, and he's really the difference maker. A very solid quarterback.
They haven't been very effective on third down. Is that the situations they've gotten themselves into? Is it the competition they play? What can you tell us from that aspect?
It's a little of both. UConn last year was a very, very good defensive football team. I think you saw, they knocked off Virginia Saturday 13-10. So, Maine didn't exactly have a cakewalk there in the opener. As to what Toledo is, they're athletic on defense and they were very active. And they created some problems at the same time. I think that Maine did a good job of taking advantage of some of the pressure stuff, and they popped some big plays on them. But I think it's a combination of the two. I think the competition level kind of put Maine in some tough situations on third down. The more 3rd and 3s you have, the more successful you're going to be on third down, because 3rd and 3 is a whole lot easier than 3rd and 12.
Can you talk a little bit about Damo Taylor? He had another big game on Saturday. Just kind of address his play to this point this season.
I thought he played real well on offense Saturday. I thought he did a good job blocking on the perimeter. I thought he made some tough catches, was very active, was very aggressive and confident, and I think it was a really good day for him. So hopefully he can build on that, and carry on with some confidence going into this week.
Coach, coming to us from Facebook, John McNamara has, from the length of the trip to dressing in a hockey arena for the Dukes and many other teams from the South in the CAA, speak to any additional steps you will take to get them ready for Saturday.
We're going to practice very hard this week. We're going to get on the plane Friday and get up there and try to keep our Friday routine as close to normal as possible. We're going to wake up Saturday morning. We're going to put on our shoulder pads and helmets. We're going to go play.
Any other questions from members of the media? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Coach.
Thanks a lot. Go Dukes.
The Dukes